My interest was to try and look at why Western-born Muslims are finding themselves drawn to these various movements. And when I started doing some of the research, very often it would lead me back to the UK. It would lead me back to the UK in terms of some of the sources, some of the initial figures that began this movement to start with. And so I just decided I might as well just come to one of the hubs of it. And then as soon as I came to England, then obviously meeting one story after the next, it just evolved into the whole film being centered here rather than across Europe. The way that the British government treated certain organizations and certain preachers, if you will, during the 80s and the 90s, I think, a lot of seeds were sown at that point, and a blind eye was turned to what was happening within our communities. And today we're seeing the results of that. So I think what is unique about the UK is that a lot of people who were considered dissidents or were pushed out of their own countries for creating a lot of tensions and problems there were accepted with open arms here. And they have very slowly but surely helped to poison a lot of our communities and now a lot of our children. So I think the government in this country absolutely has to take some responsibility for the fact that they knew this was happening. This is nothing new. This is what I tell people about the film. They say, ISIS, this, that, and the other. And really, ISIS it's today and has become a mutation that is even more brutal and vicious than its previous incarnations. But this is a movement that has been steadily building over the last 30 years. I think some of the draws are similar in the sense that people go for different reasons. Some people go because they look at the suffering of other Muslims. They look at, for example, in Syria, what's happening there. And they genuinely, out of a very sincere wish to want to contribute in some sort of positive way, are going over there. So I think that idealism that was present in the previous incarnations is still there. And I think, so ideologically, I don't think that there's necessarily that much difference in that sense, in the sense of wanting to stand up against persecution and oppression and violence and the abuse of Muslims. But I think obviously what's very different between now and then is the war on terror happened in between. So in the 80s and 90s, we had British governments, even American governments, supporting mujahideen, supporting fighters that were going from the West and participating on these battlefields. But obviously in between there, the war on terror happened. So the West also has decided that their relationship to foreign fighters, if we call it that, has changed. So I think that's, in fact, one of the most fundamental differences that have changed, is the lens through which we in the West now look at this phenomenon has very much shifted since 9/11. Then obviously also the groups, as I was saying, specifically groups like IS now, have become much more brutal, much more violent and much more theatrical about their violence. And also social media and the internet and the fact that we now have various outlets for information and exposure of that brutality is also very different. So what draws some people to this? I think some of it is the idealism, but I think for other people it is feeling like the sense of utopia, the sense of wanting to build a perfect society, feeling like perhaps this is an opportunity to do that. I think some people genuinely believe that. I think other people are escaping their realities here in the hopes and wishes and dreams of perhaps there can be something better. So, really what this movement feeds on today and has fed on in the past is the idealism of our youth and the sincere impulse to want to do something useful. And I think also it provides a sense of purpose for a lot of people. And then for another group of people, what I found is then there is this sort of apocalypse scenario that they feel they are going to participate in. So it's a variety of reasons. Some women that have gone, there are all kinds of theories from their escaping unhappy marriages or unhappy lives here, or they are falling in love with, a jihadi over there. Or what I would say is that some of that is probably true, but also I don't think that we can treat women any differently than men, in the sense that women can also be bloodthirsty, women can also be idealistic, women can also want to participate in building a new society. So I think there's a wide variety of reasons. And then, the prominent one that we hear about is that the foreign policy of the West is creating a lot of frustration amongst Muslims, and they want to go and participate because they don't feel like they can engage in these issues while being here. And lastly, what I would like to say is what we're doing in the Western media is, the thing is, we're rewarding violence with attention. So what we're proving, in a way, what we're proving to ISIS, we're walking straight into their trap, and we're proving that their brutality does get our attention. I'm not saying people shouldn't report on news like that, they should, but to revel in it and to stew in it forever and ever and ever only feeds their agenda. It does not feed the agenda of peace, or of compassion, or of love, or of trying to create inclusive societies. It creates the agenda of division, of hatred and fear, and communities are falling farther and farther apart from each other rather than coming together. And again, here I would still point my fingers towards our governments. I think our governments are treating these issues very irresponsibly. I think the language that they use is a divisive language rather than a unifying language. Our leaders are somehow incapable of painting a future that includes everybody, a future where all our young people can feel like they can be invested in it. So that's our failure as a society. That's the failure of our governments. That's our failure as communities and as parents and as fellow human beings, that our young people find that death is a better option than life here. And the fact of the matter is, I was in the process of making the film. A lot of people were saying, oh, you just let them go die. Who cares? Who cares? If that's what they want to go and do, let them do it. But, or let's prevent them so they don't kill us. For me, I don't want them to die. I don't want our children to die. I don't want our children to go to Syria and to become cannon fodder for the local politics and the local power battles of an entirely different dynamic than what our kids think that they're going for. I don't want our children to die a meaningless death. I was speaking to a young Iraqi man not very long ago, and he was saying, Deeyah, don't you understand? It drives us mad. It drives us crazy, the foreign policy and what America is doing and what Britain's doing. And I said, listen, I agree with you. I actually completely agree. But the truth, and he said, X amount of millions of Muslims have been murdered. And I said, listen, my dear, dear friend, listen, if you go, you will just be one more. Will it stop what's happening in Palestine? It will not. Will it stop the suffering of Iraqis? It will not. So you are more useful, you are more benefit to these issues alive here. Let's try to really do something. The kind of patriarchal societies that we come from is not just male-female, it's also old-young. So I think the way that our elders sometimes tend to treat the younger people within our communities is with some level of not contempt, but it's quite patronizing, and it's distant. And I think we have to embrace our young people. Our young people have a lot of questions. Some of the young people I spoke to, even in the process of making this film, said, I have a lot of questions about what's happening around the world. I have a lot of questions about me, about life, and nobody answered them. I went to the mosque, nobody answered them. I went to my father, he doesn't answer them. So we have to actually be, the thing is, young people, and rightly so, have a lot of questions. It's a part of growing up. It's a part of learning the world and learning yourself. They will go and get the answers, even if they're the wrong answers. And right now they are finding the wrong answers because we refuse to engage with them. So what can communities do, all of us, is actually embrace them and welcome them with open hearts and open arms, and tell them that you are ours. You are a part of us. We will listen to you, and you can ask us anything, and we will openly and without patronizing, genuinely engage, even if they're uncomfortable issues, even if they are unpleasant topics that they bring up. We have to engage. There are children. If we don't embrace them, there are other people who are willing to do it. And right now, people like those are ISIS. They are saying, come to us, be a part of this great ummah, this great thing. And it doesn't matter if you're white, doesn't matter if you're a woman, doesn't matter if you're old, young, fat, ugly, pretty, we don't care. It doesn't matter if you succeed in your academic studies or not, or if you failed. If you don't live up to the expectations of your parents and you don't live up to the expectations of Western society, we still accept you. We want you, we welcome you, you're a part of us. And we support you and care for you unconditionally. That's what draws our young people there often. Then obviously they pervert that eventually into violence, into just being, as I said, cannon fodder for their cause. But that's love is actually what draws most people. Love is much more powerful than anything. You speak even to a hardened criminal with some dignity and some respect and some love, and not just shoo them off. But don't be stupid, don't be fool. That's what a lot of our elders do to our young people. If we speak with our young people with some love and some openness, then they're not likely to leave very easily. I think unfortunately they are going to, at this point, I do think they're going to exist for a while longer. I don't think they're going away anytime soon. And I think part of what we have to do now is we have to find ways to support people to come out of it, because there are a lot of people already wanting to leave. And so we have to create, whether it's underground tunnels or whatever it is, but we have to help people out rather than block the door or strip people of their passports. I think we have to do that. And I think on a longer term basis, what we have to do as a people, and I don't say Muslims, I say people, all people, is try to work for a vision of our communities, our societies, our countries, and our world that is genuinely more inclusive. You know, these types of movements fester in discontent. They, you know, the sort of the engine of terror succeeds because of pain and suffering, and poverty and lack of opportunity, and of inequality and injustice. So we have to become more just, we have to become more equal, we have to become more inclusive, and that's asking a lot. But really, what's the alternative? Yes? So we have to, how I see it is we have to become better. We have to become better, and I think that's the only way to, in the long term, defeating a movement like this. I would like this movement dismantled tomorrow if it was up to me. But I realize, unfortunately, it's going to take a lot longer. But in the immediate term, I do think that we can prevent this loss of life, this constant flow of human resource, which is our children, that this movement is drawing. Whether they're coming straight from Pakistan, straight from Iraq, or from Libya, or from Tunisia, or from London, they're all our children. And I think it's because of the discontent and the terrible circumstances around the world that this movement is able to play on that suffering and capitalize for their own gain. If, you know, for me personally, religion or spirituality is a very personal, very intimate thing. For me, the reason I made this film, this is probably hard for people to understand, but for me, this was not about Islam. To make this film, or even this topic, this is not about, for me, it's not about Islam. For me, it's about human beings. It's about human nature. It's about our humanity. It's about trying to understand what it is that makes our young people susceptible to messages of violence. And what I found is that what makes our young people susceptible to messages of violence is no different than what makes skinheads or gang members or cult members susceptible to it. And it all comes down to basic root social, psychological, emotional issues. At the beginning, I'm not discounting the political cause side of it. That's there too. But I'm a very political person as well. But I choose to pick up a camera, not a gun. So there are other factors at play which are deeper than that. They are more human than that. And so that's what I'm the most interested in addressing. What people choose, how people choose to incorporate Islam into their life, what level of spirituality or connection they want with God is their own matter. I believe in secular space. I believe in secular society where both the religious and the non-religious can exist side by side. And beyond that, for me, I'm really not trying to be Bollywood. I really am not. But really, love trumps all. It really does. So as long as love is present, I don't really care. If people want to dress that in Islam or in Christianity or Buddhism, that's their matter, that's their choice. And I support whatever that choice is, but for me it's love.